They are so mad, they bust open the doors, they trash it, whoever was there must have like taken off. I mean, they would have been killed. Like if somebody was there, like there was bloodlust in this mob.
Welcome to Atypical Daydream, a podcast about life on the road. I'm Josh, your host, and thanks for stopping by. My guest today is Scout McComb. He's an artist and a writer building a sculpture garden in the West Texas desert. Scout is an old friend and someone who I've been on many adventures with. His stories take us deep into the heart of Guatemala, from jungles to highlands, embracing both lightness and the darkness.
The first thing I think about when I think of Guatemala is itself kind of a story. And I'd asked if you remembered that book, The Celestine Prophecy, which you did. I want to say that was the mid to late 90s. And I don't want to dwell on the book too much, but the thesis of the book, to really boil it down, was a group of people are kind of on this voyage of inner discovery. And at the end of that voyage, they were going to find out how to transcend this earthly plane and, go to paradise. It was kind of like a new age version of like how to get to heaven. And that was really kind of in the ether back then. I suppose it is to some degree now, but kind of the new age movement of the 90s that I remember was all about kind of like transcending life somehow. And in the Celestine Prophecy and in that kind of new age world at large, they always used to use this idea that the Mayan civilization just vanished. Like one day there was this civilization and they just like vibrated to the point where they vanished and went to some higher plane. And that was kind of the thesis of this book. They were like the example in this book, The Celestine Prophecy, like, yeah, that's the ultimate place. The Mayans did it. We're going to learn like how the Mayans transcended and evolved past the earth. And I kind of I must have been in high school when I read that, and I, bought into it pretty much because I kind of in my Yankee localism kind of way thought of Guatemala as just kind of being like Mexico. Like it was all the same, like south of Laredo, it's like Mexico all the way down to the tip of South America, just kind of like a non-traveled, Yankee. And, but I traveled a lot in Mexico, and Mexico's an amazing place. So it's not like I thought of that in a negative way. I just thought it was amazing all the way down, but just in a Mexico way. I didn't really think that like it's like everything's different there. It's as different from Mexico as, Poland is different from the US or whatever. Choose your analogy. So when I read the Celestine Prophecy, I thought of like the Mayan civilization as being this paragon of spiritual transcendence. One of the things that shocked me when I first went down there that apparently nobody told me was that the Mayans are all still there. And that's not in a negative, disappointing, I thought they had transcended. No, it was amazing. It was absolutely, I was gobsmacked, to use the Australian word, that I thought it was going to kind of be this mestizo, kind of like Mexico, like this mestizo culture. Like in Guatemala City, it's very mestizo. But then you start getting out into Guatemala and you realize like, wait, who are these people like wearing traditional textiles and speaking like almost like click languages where you're just like, what the fuck? What are they talking? I thought they spoke Spanish down here. I don't recognize that. My shock very quickly turned to like absolute wonder, amazement, respect, and humility the deeper I got into Guatemala, and to learn that like not only is the Mayan civilization still there, but they are thriving in many ways. I did one of these. I got caught up. I was in some village way, way back in the bush. This was in the Highland region. It was a Mayan village. And I was sitting out on the stoop reading a book. It was getting dark. And all of a sudden, a huge throng of people came running in front of me. And they were like all dudes. And they looked really mad. I don't know, maybe 150, something like that. It must have been like almost everyone in the village. You know, my first thought was like, dude, I got to run with them. I got to see what this is. So I threw my book to the side and just started running. In the center of the village was like the mestizo, like administrative governmental building, right? So this is like not Mayan. This is like the Guatemala, right? Guatemala is ultimately, yeah, it's the name of a country, but that's like a political term. Like to these people, it wasn't Guatemala. It was their name in Mayan for where they lived. Like that, like Guatemala was just a construct. So, but Guatemala was there in this building. And apparently they had passed some kind of tax or something like that. And Josh, I had the feeling that someone in Boston who lived around the harbor in the late 1700s must have felt sitting out on the steps peeling a potato by the harbor when a bunch of angry people came running by to push a bunch of tea off those ships because they were mad at a tax. It was the same. I was like, this is the same. And so I'm running with them. We run to this building. They are so mad. They bust open the doors. They start throwing. This thing's like maybe 4 stories high. It's the only like real building there. They trash it. Whoever was there must have like taken off, like whatever. They would have been killed. Like if somebody was there, like there was bloodlust in this mob. They were so pissed. They started throwing things out the windows and, chairs and tables and paperwork. And then there was smoke. And essentially, like, they started lighting the place on fire. And I, being a fully immersive tourist as I am, I had to get in there and light some shit on fire too. So also being, 19 or 20, like, just, I definitely would not, maybe I would do that today, but I definitely did it back then. So I had to participate in it somehow, if for no other reason than to get a little taste of what it must have been like to be a part of the Boston Tea Party. And so they literally set this building on fire. Like while it's burning, like the kind of the village police and the village firemen it's all volunteer, right? But they have like a little hat that they put on. They're like these little signifiers that they're part of the firemen, but it's really like you just saw him like 5 minutes earlier and he was just dressed normally. And then you see him 5 minutes later and he has like a little red hat on. And it's like, oh, okay, now he's a fireman. And they just all stood there smoking cigarettes, watching the whole thing happen. And at a certain point, the mob just burned itself out on its own anger. And then everybody went home. And then the next morning, like there were people out cleaning it up. And, I'm a writer, so I have like a taste for the remarkable moment, right? Capital R, capital M. Like I like those remarkable moments. And that was a remarkable moment, and I don't remember a lot of other stuff, but I remember that. I remember being in that riot that kind of signified like this conflict in that country along kind of that line between Mayan and Mestizo. Another remarkable moment was near a place called Todos Santos. I remember being part of this. It was almost like there was this ceremony, but it was what missionaries from Spain in the 1500s wandering around like with friars and brown smocks and conquistadors in their armor. It was what they would have called a satanic ritual. It was like, it like had all like the trappings of like, if you read those old accounts of the quote unquote heathens, this was like that, like everybody in this little village got completely wasted on corn liquor. It was a night for the Saint Simone. I think that was the saint that was kind of like incorporated. Like it has like Christian or Catholic, and then also kind of Mayan stuff wrapped together. And Saint Simone smokes cigarettes and drinks alcohol. And it was like the saint of intoxication and death. I was a part of this thing, and it was just remarkable. Everybody got completely wasted on corn liquor and just started crying and moaning and writhing on the floor and yelling. And some of the dudes were getting in fights. It was like, but it was all like okay in this container of this particular night. And it made so much sense to me. And it must have been almost like a purge, you know, like almost like not like that movie, The Purge, but kind of that idea where you set aside this time in this case, like in a very kind of with some strict parameters and ritual around it. And, you know, there was like some songs and there was there was an altar and all this stuff. But over time, as the night progressed, it got like crazier and crazier to where like I had to leave. Like I was just like, dude, this is far beyond celebration. It was something really deep and dark, but not dark in the sense that these are dark people. It's something in all of us that had like a place on this one particular night where it could express itself. But there was this crackling electricity in the air that like anything could happen. This was the one time of year where like you could say the thing that you weren't supposed to say, and you could weep and claw and pull your hair out, and you could get so drunk and no one would be mad at you the next day. And that totally blew me away. It makes me introspect on why that stuff struck me so deeply. And I think it's because, you know, purging of unconscious energies, but they're not really unconscious if you're having a ceremony to purge them, right? There's some understanding that these energies exist. And those are the same energies that if you're a creative artist, you're kind of contending with all the time. And since that's kind of been my orientation in life is being an artist, I feel like my inner dowsing rod or my inner kind of gyroscope just seems to is attracted to anything that kind of gives homage or energy or space for unconscious energies to express themselves, because that's what art is.
Hey, Josh here. I love making this podcast, and I'd love to make it my full-time gig. Besides telling the stories, I'm basically a one-man band, and that takes time. If you're enjoying the podcast, please consider becoming a patron. You'll have access to loads of great bonus stories, and you'll have the satisfaction of knowing that you're supporting a truly independent podcast. Find the Patreon link in the show notes. And thanks.
You and I and John and a couple other people went with the dad that John was staying with, Ephraim, on that trip to El Zotz, which I think was 4 days. It was like 2 days in and 2 days out. Is that right? He took us back in there. And I think on the second day, we saw something that at the time I didn't realize how significant it was. But over the years, especially being an outdoors person and kind of traveling more in my life and knowing hunters and stuff like that, we saw something that like nobody's really ever seen. We turned the corner, and again, we're all on game trails, right? Or chiclero trails, the trails that chicleros would take to get to chicle trees to harvest the chicle, or shate trees, which is like allspice. So it's like part game trail, part like these tiny little single track trails. And we turned the trail, and right before us, I think like 20 feet from us, like it wasn't far. I mean, maybe even less. There was not only one jaguar, but two jaguars. And there were not only two jaguars, but they were mating. And whatever like instinct towards caution that they must have was completely overridden by their instinct to procreate. And because I don't know if you remember, but they didn't stop. They didn't like look up and go, oh shit, we're busted, let's run. Like they kept mating and we watched them mate. And the male finished, and we just were all like standing still, I think. I don't think we got, there were no phone cameras or anything. I don't think anybody took a picture. We're all just standing there staring at him. The male finishes, dismounts, and the female just lies there and kind of rolls over on her back. Dude, and she just like rubs in her back. She sees us, but she doesn't care. She's not scared. And then at some point she gets up and just saunters off, into the jungle. And I can't tell you how many people I told that story to that straight up called me a liar. Like in Guatemala, especially because the jaguar is a very like sacred animal to the Mayan population. And it's considered like a huge, like lucky moment if you're able to see one in your life, much less two and much less mate. Like at that point, they're just like, no, you're making that up. Like there's no way you saw that. Taking that trek and marrying it to the other longer one I did, we went past that like another 3 days or 2 days. It was like 4 days in and 4 days out. It was like a 7 or 8 day trek. And we went to El Mirador, which was, I think, the largest like Mayan city known. And all along the way, we're seeing ruins of the civilization. Not just every once in a while, not just like once a day, but literally like minute by minute, we're walking by mounds. It was like if you like went to Hong Kong and you just kind of like let Hong Kong sit for 100,000 years and then you walk through it. Yeah, there'd be plants and jungles and all that stuff, but you're in Hong Kong the whole time. And that's how it was. It was just like we're in this civilization everywhere. It's everywhere. And then on the 4th day or whatever, we make it to El Mirador. And we're the only people out there. I mean, there's no tourists or anything. I think maybe there's more of that now, but back then it was an extremely difficult thing to even know about, much less to get a guide. And there were 2 park rangers, for lack of a better word. And it seemed like they had gone months without seeing anybody. And they were so excited. They were so excited to see us, to see other humans. And I do believe that they were Mayan. Now, as a quick side note to this, the national bird of Guatemala is the Quetzal. And the Quetzal is a beautiful, beautiful bird. Again, count your lucky stars if you're able to see one in the wild, because they're very, very hard to come across. Well, there were quite a few in El Mirador. And it was like one of the first things that like I saw when we started walking, like this area kind of opened up, and it's not cleared like other ruins. It's like there's trees growing through. It's not a cleared place, but there were Quetzals. And it was amazing to like spend the night in this place and to go up to the top of the tallest temple and to see jungle as far as the eye could see. The spirit of the Mayan civilization, man, was just booming. I mean, it was just like you're like you're like in the epicenter of an ancient civilization. Which, by the way, these park rangers were essentially that civilization. This is what they're doing now. And so they like insist that they want to make us dinner. They won't take no for an answer because we brought our own food. And I had heard that these, I mean, look, man, people have different philosophies with this. When I was down there, I used to spread my money any chance I could. Anytime I had change or anything, because, what we just throw away or consider like loose change in the couch, like that can like change a person's week. I did not want to eat these guys' food is what I'm saying. That's the reason why I said that. I did not want to eat their food. I wanted them to eat our food. I was like, no. We brought plenty of food. We want to feed you guys. We want to give you some money and some stuff. And they would not have it. They were like, and I love this too, because I would have been the same way. And they were like, no. You've got to let us cook for you. And we don't want your money. And we just want you to be here. And we're just happy to see you. And so I'll just never forget sitting at this table under this thatched roof. And these guards bring out these soup bowls. And there's certain like characteristic gourds and kind of potatoes that you find in all the soups there. And I don't remember what they're called, but it was that plus this meat. And we're like eating this meat, and I'm like, man, they must have some chickens somewhere around here, right? Chickens, right? Hey, Paul, have you seen chickens around here? No. Really? Where do you think they get this meat from? Do you think it's like, do they go like hunting game? It's like, I don't know. I mean, we hadn't seen a deer. We saw some monkeys. I was like, maybe it's monkey meat. I bet you were eating monkey meat. I mean, other than monkeys, there's just those Quetzals, but that's an endangered species, like on the UNESCO. Like you can get thrown in, prison for her. Like, surely it's not a Quetzal, right? It's got to be a monkey. Like Quetzals are like on the verge of extinction. And at some point, I like talked to one of these guys, and I'm like, what is this? What are we eating? Monos? Los monos? Venado? ¿Qué es? ¿Qué es el carne? Oh, no, amigo. Es un quetzal. I shouldn't laugh, but I mean, hey, man, this is their land. That's their like sacred bird. They have guests. You kill the sacred animal for a guest, right? That's what you do there. That's what you do in that world. I've got to say, though, it did just taste like chicken. It was, in a weird way, it was like the perfect moment also to have there in that place.
I want to thank Scout for sharing his experiences. Make sure to check out his woodworking and overland camping social media channels. Links in the show notes. This podcast was created and produced by me, Josh Caldwell. Music by Visual Aid, my side music project. General support and copywriting by Miranda Caldwell. If you like the show, please follow, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you'd like to financially support the show, check out my Patreon page. You'll have access to loads of great bonus stories. You can find the link in the show notes. Thank you for listening, and I hope you come back next week.